Good afternoon and welcome to Africa Discourse. I am Wilson Marshall. Today is all about what you've been hearing of and what the world have been feeling and what they've been talking about. The nooks and crannies of the world has been, one way or the other, infected or affected by this dreaded virus, coronavirus, COVID-19. Depends on what you really want to call it. Right now we're focusing in Africa. Last week we talked about this, but it's like, I don't know what is really happening. The number, they've increased thus far. You get to hear the number of infection, the number of death, the number of those being affected, and of course, the drastic measures put in place by various governments of the continent, over the countries of the continent, to really check, to really curtail, to really tackle this virus. Is the world winning the battle against this virus? Is Africa winning the battle, or is just starting in Africa after it has committed havoc around all the continents of the world? According to a report, the Chinese seems to be having an upper hand, while Italy is like the worst hit right now. But according to the prediction of World Health Organization, if Africa isn't careful, may just become the epicenter of this virus. Can I say God forbid? Yeah, I agree to that totally, God forbid. But in part of increase in infection in Africa, what is really happening? Are we listening to your advice? Does Africa as a continent have the capacity, the capability to really withstand this virus? The drastic measures put in place by some African countries, is it going to help out? We're talking about closure of airports. Yes, Nigeria, they're on it, while Egypt gave their citizens the 31st of March to close down all airports. What about the stay-at-home order? Is it going to help out? What about the backlash of the crash in economic activities? What about the safe social distance? Is it going to help out? Now, despite the fact that these rules have been put in place, how come in Africa we're still having an increasing amount or number of those infected by the virus? With me here in the studio to really talk about this, I have a legal practitioner. Give me to welcome Barrister Douglas Omoigwe. Barrister, welcome to the show.
The pleasure is all mine.
Namaste. Say no more handshake, just have to be like, hey,
yes.
welcome.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the Indian way of greeting.
Yeah.
Namaste. Okay. We don't want to go into the medical aspect of faith because the doctors already done justice to it, how it worked in the lungs and all that. We don't want to go into it, but right now, why is it that it's increasing in Africa as a continent? In Egypt, we are talking about 244 as at yesterday. In Nigeria, as per this morning, should be 35 now. In Ghana, they have their own fair share, above 20. If you take a look at Morocco, above 40. The numbers just keep on skyrocketing in this continent. What is really happening?
First and foremost, I would say that this situation we are finding ourselves, it's a really difficult one. We are experiencing a trying time as it stands. But if you look at this pandemic, and trying to assess it based on the African context, we'll find out that Africa and Nigeria, if we want to use Nigeria as a case study, we are having issues with socio-economic problems. What do I mean by that? Is that the ways or means we are trying to use to contain this pandemic is not forthcoming. A situation whereby the Africans, they don't even listen. An average African is a very stubborn being. A situation whereby the government will issue a statement to that effect that social distances is one of the effective means of containing this virus. But you will notice that many Africans, especially we in the western part of the continent, we don't listen to this advice or these preemptive measures in trying to contain the virus. So if you consider all this, you will know that it will be very difficult to contain this pandemic. And as a result of the fact that we are having issues in trying to listen to the relevant authorities who are saddled with the responsibility of trying to enlighten us, trying to educate us on the issues that has to do with this COVID-19. They are having difficulties in trying to, or Africans, as the case may be, we are having difficulties in trying to assimilate or understand what they are telling us or what they are disseminating to us. So this is an issue. And if you also consider the fact that the literacy rate in Africa, that is also a challenge as well. Yes, if you look at Nigeria, up to about 60% of the mass, they are uneducated. So these are issues.
All right, people like saying that is the lifestyle of an average African, that communal kind of lifestyle, that is what's making it to increase in Africa. What's your own angle on that view?
Yes, from time immemorial, Africans, as a group of persons or people, we love this communal lifestyle. We love social gathering. If you notice, even in Nigeria, we love social gathering. It has to do with burial ceremonies, naming ceremony, even wedding ceremony, as the case may be. So it's our norm, it's a culture among Africans to always come together and feast. So we mustn't undermine the fact that this social or communal gathering of Africans, of the African brethren, is also a determinant in the skyrocketing rates or ratios of this pandemic in Africa. But we will also try as much as possible to understand the fact that this issue is not an issue that we should just jettison. This is a respiratory syndrome. This is a respiratory disease. And the potency of this pandemic, it's really high. You can contract it even by mere touching your flask or the tables or even your car keys or your door, as the case may be. So the means or the avenue by which you can contract this disease, it's really potent. It's really high. So that ought to be a kind of a sober reflection to us as an African or as Africans, as the case may be, that these social gatherings or this our lifestyle that we know, that we have embraced, that we have cultivated from time immemorial should be jettisoned and try as much as possible to save our lives from this Wuhan virus, as the case may be. So the main feature of humans is the concept of adaptability. We as human beings, it's a very primary feature of ours that we adapt as situation comes by, as situation comes on our way. So if this is a problem that you coming together for social gathering or communal living, as the case may be, it will be or it will cause a huge effect in trying to disseminate or in contracting this pandemic. I think it's high time we jettison this idea and try as much as possible to embrace habits that will sustain us as a people.
Now, let's take a look at some of the measures adopted by some African countries. Like in South Africa, it was like everyone stay at home, to the extent that the minister and the cabinet of Cyril Ramaphosa said, look, staying at home is like so unlike African, that she's bored, though she came out to apologize to the South African citizens that this is for their own good. But for what she said, she chose to speak out the mind and heart of so many persons. Now, if you go to Egypt, they talked about total shutdown of the airport come March 31. In Nigeria also, we are following suit. Now, despite all these measures, it isn't working. Why? Why?
My dear Wilson, there are so many factors militating to this issue that you just raised. If you look at other highly civilized or industrialized nations of the world, you will notice that there is these resources, or there are resources, as the case may be, resources and the manpower, not only the manpower, the budget, the financial budget, in trying to to implement this stay-at-home policy. You understand? The United States government pumped about $1 trillion into the economy in trying to ameliorate the situation of people going out and get the necessary supplies they need in this era, or this pandemic era we find ourselves. But in Africa, we are having serious challenges. Nigeria, as it stands, Nigeria is broke. If you want to use Nigeria as a case study, Nigeria is broke. We don't even have the means to even try to contain this virus. In trying to contain this virus, we don't even have, okay, just look at a situation whereby it's just only 5 hospitals in the federation, in the whole of the federation, that has the ability to test or conduct a coronavirus test, or as the case may be, a coronavirus test. It's just one in Edo, one in Oyo, one in Ogun, 2 in Lagos. You will find out that in the southeast geopolitical zone, the northeast, the northwest, and even the north central, there is no hospital whatsoever that has the ability to conduct this test. So these are challenges. If you want to implement a stay-at-home policy, we have to consider so many factors. Do we really have the financial might? Do we have the manpower? Do we have the skilled labor when it comes to doctors, epidemiologists, virologists, as the case may be, to tackle this menace? These are issues that we need to consider. And at the end of the day, even the average African would like to go out and try to get ends meet. So these are issues. And it's very pathetic that the African government, or African governments, as the case may be, they don't even have the means, or they are not even addressing these issues. And based on the pandemic, because it's a global pandemic now.
It's a pandemic.
It's a pandemic. It's a global pandemic. Nations of the world will not even listen to African countries in securing loans. So these are issues. So if all these issues are not ironed out in due time, the case will be the coronavirus pandemic will be life-threatening. It will be really be sad.
Are you now saying that from your own analysis,
yes,
this may just be where African countries are brought down to almost a zero level when you talk about economy due to this virus?
Of course, yes, it will get to that. Now, I telephoned a friend of mine in Canada, who happens to be a very good friend of mine. But now she's in Canada, and she's one of all those health workers in one of these Canadian hospitals. Now, she told me in good faith yesterday that as civilized, as advanced, technologically advanced as Canada, they are having issues trying to get protective jars for their health workers in trying to curb this menace. So in her own reflection, she was like, if Canada, one of the best countries that we can find in the face of this earth, they are having issues in trying to secure protective jars or medical materials or equipment, as the case may be, in tackling this pandemic, what about Africa? What about our motherland, Nigeria? You understand? So these are issues that we need to sort out in due time. And take it or leave it. Because of the demographical and the socio-economical setup of many African countries, it will be very difficult for their economy to strive or to survive in this kind of situation we find ourselves. It will be very difficult.
Wow, that's quite interesting. Very, very scary. We're not here to spread fear. We're taking a look at the reasons why this thing is happening, the impact of increase in infection, because right now it's on the rise in some countries in Africa, though we still have some very few countries, close to 4 or something there about that this virus hasn't gotten to yet. Malawi is coronavirus free. Right, yes, totally free. They are doing their thing there, but still they choose to at least put some measures in place. Now, this virus has this ability to go across borders. People like saying that there's going to be total change of the way of life we as Africans are used to. Now, if we're not going to be able to live the way that we used to live, the communal kind of life now to curb this virus? What other means do you think we should do? We should use? Because you get to hear an instruction given to UK citizens during Mother's Day, don't even visit your parents, just be in your house. Stay at home. Can an African really do this? Your family day celebration, don't bother to go, just be in your house. The best gift you can give to them is to stay away from their lives for this period. Can we as Africa do that?
Let's use Lagos as a case study. Yesterday, we knew what transpired in Lagos. Before yesterday, the Lagos state government issued a directive or an order to that effect that a gathering more than 50 persons should be prohibited. And we found a situation whereby persons in Lagos, they still went to church. They still went to their respective places of worship to do what they know best. So, judging from this assessment or this question you just raised, I think it will be a serious challenge for Africans to adopt this stay-at-home policy. It will really be. Because Africans, in our own, how will I put it now? In our own inherent nature, we tend not to listen to orders or directives made by the government because we have lost faith. Many of us have even lost faith in the government based on their undoings in the past. So now, even many Africans, they also have this perception that the coronavirus is a sham. It's a hoax. They don't even believe that there is anything of sort that is bedeviling the human race as it stands now. So these are issues that we need to tackle out in due time. Even as worse as the HIV, I guess it's also a pandemic as well. The HIV pandemic, many persons in Africa doesn't even believe that HIV actually exists. And that is the reason why HIV as a virus, as a disease, has its toll seriously on Africans because of the wrong perception that we have towards that particular pandemic.
Now we have the wrong perception of the COVID-19 virus.
Yeah, many Nigerians have it. My friend who resides in Abuja, we were chatting on WhatsApp yesterday, and he was like, do you really know the way people are perceiving this virus? That in Abuja, as it stands now, many of them believe they have it at the back of their mind, or they are bearing it in mind that this virus is a sham. That is just like one of all these political wars, how will I put it now? A political sham by the government to try to extort money or to siphon money for their own personal interest. They don't really believe that this is actually true, that is happening, is lurking on each and every one's doorstep. They don't really believe in that. So these are issues. Until it's just like Michael Jackson in his song, Man in the Mirror. He said the only way you can make a change is if you look at the mirror, you
look at yourself and you make that change.
Yes, yeah. That was what he said in that particular song. Many Nigerians have the perception, or many Africans, as the case may be, have the perception that this is not true. So how can they make, or how can they put preemptive measures in place in tackling or containing this pandemic? I don't know if you are understanding what I'm trying to say, Mr. Wilson. So these are issues. Until we have it in our subconscious and also in our conscious state that this virus is real, that this pandemic is as real as things we can touch, we can feel with our hands, with our bare hands. That is the only way we can have a quality and effective measure in containing this virus.
Wow, quality and effective measures in containing this virus. Well, if you tend to ask some persons, they said, look, in Africa, we have our own ways. Well, I saw one video, though unverified video. I saw some policemen rushing into a mall or something like
in Zimbabwe, actually.
Yeah, in Zimbabwe, a worship center, beating people to leave the church. When we come back, I'll be asking my guests to get to know, if that should be the measure the government of the day in Africa should take to contain this virus, because it's like people are not listening. You say, look, don't go to a gathering beyond 50 persons. You get to see the outcome to the extent that even in Nigeria, is it the police or military personnel had to go into the church to start counting the number of people in that church to see if there are more than 50. Once the guy got to 50, he asked others to leave. Should that be the measure we should take in Africa? Because if you go to Iran, on an hourly basis, you get to see people being infected because of this communal kind of living. You go to Malaysia also, when they trace the impact or the infection of coronavirus, it was traced to the mosque. Now,
in South Korea?
Yes, in South Korea, it was traced to the gatherings in the church.
Yes.
As we talk, people like Axel Wilson, what about our marketplaces? We'll be right back after this break. Do stay with us. If we should use the African approach, the forceful approach, whether you like it or not, disband. Stay tuned. Before we went on that break, we are taking a look at the African kind of approach, the forceful approach. You saw that picture online, went viral when you got to see some policemen dressed up in riot policemen attire, and they're bouncing with the crowd using batons on them to chase everyone out of the worship center to prevent the spread of this virus. You saw that video also where a policeman walked into a church and started counting the number of persons in the church to see if they are obeying the rules and regulations. Yes. But I'll give it to that church, they maintained that healthy distance.
Yes.
You know, but the number was like more than 50 and some were asked to leave. But that Zimbabwean approach, using baton and everything, hit them so that they will learn. Do you think that that should be encouraged in the African continent?
Of course. I seriously...
they should be beaten.
Yes.
To shape.
Yes.
To obey the rules and regulations put on the ground for their safety.
It's just the doctrine or a doctrine of a particular organization. Ordo Templi Orientis, order out of chaos. In a situation whereby there is chaos, there won't be order. So in trying to make sure that such a thing will not suffice, you have to exercise a considerable amount of force in implementing these policies of the government. If you will notice, I will always use Nigeria. Pardon me, this program is Africa Discourse.
Yeah, Nigeria is in Africa.
Yes, yeah. Nigeria is Africa, and Nigeria is the most populous black nation on earth. So we will always use Nigeria as a case study. I don't know many persons, and I want to streamline this line of thought to Benin City, as the case may be. If you notice, those persons applying the Ugbowo-Lagos Express Road, you will notice that there is a particular place at this Ugbowo-Lagos Road, the University of Benin, opposite the University of Benin. We all noticed what transpired a few years back when a Uniben student was hit by a car, and that prompted the government at the time, and even the House of Rep member representing Ovia Northeast, Ovia constituency, to write or to ensure that there is a pedestrian bridge that will be put in place in trying to make sure that Uniben students coming from the other side of the road can be able to have a safer passage to access their school, that is University of Benin. But we have noticed, after the implementation and execution of that pedestrian bridge, that many students do not even use that pedestrian bridge. And as a result of that, there are so many, we witness a high level of traffic at that particular place, at that place where this pedestrian bridge is situated. So this is to tell you that an average African...
All right, you just hold on. I want to go for another break. When we return, you throw more light into your explanation. Right. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back. Thank you so much for staying tuned. It's all about the impact and the increase in the rate of infection of coronavirus in African countries. With me here in the studio is a legal practitioner, a political analyst, Barrister Douglas Moigui. I really appreciate your wonderful analysis. Now, we're taking a look at the, in quote now, African approach, beaten to shape, according to what we saw in that viral video. So take it up from there.
Yes, like I said before the break, I think it will be a very good means of trying to implement these policies of the government as far as tackling the corona pandemic is concerned. I made mention of an instance using the Uniben, the pedestrian bridge close to the Uniben University of Benin main gate, the main gate of the University of Benin. And I said that if we have noticed the trend going on since when this pedestrian bridge was established, we noticed that students, they don't even ply the bridge, they don't even use the bridge. That's to tell you the inherent nature of an average African. We are stubborn. But peradventure, or if actually there was a task force to that effect that will make sure that every student coming through from the other way, from the other side of the bridge, or through Uniben, the University of Benin main gate, as the case may be, must use the pedestrian bridge, I think they would have achieved, or it would have yielded a positive result. So if you want to narrow it down to this pandemic that is bedeviling the African continent and also globally, as the case may be, we will notice that, yes, it's the use of force. It's very important. It's pertinent.
Now, we're not into barbarians or
violate fundamental human rights.
Behavior that violates the fundamental human rights.
Permit me to say this. I'm not trying to be callous with my statement, but I feel that, I feel actually that an average African is animalistic in nature.
How? People take this as an insult on our personality.
That is why I begged for clemency before saying this. They're animalistic. They don't listen. If you notice, during the era of the comrade governor, when he was trying to, fix the dilapidated roads in Benin, and he noticed that the use of open gutter would not be nice, because as a result of a refuse dump that are, used, that citizens of Edo State use in trying to dispose their refuse. So what he did was to narrow down, or to place a little hole, a very little hole in all these slabs, all these gutters, so that water can penetrate or can pass through it. Did you know that even market women, these are Benin inhabitants, they still forced it through. That is to tell you how stubborn an African is. So without the use of force, necessary force, like the one we noticed in Lagos yesterday, when it exceeded 50 and the police officers ordered the church to evacuate their members, or their members, as the case may be. If that kind of force, you mustn't beat them. You mustn't beat somebody before you implement a particular action.
What if they are faced by some stubborn persons now, according to you, that are resisting? What do you think they should do? Do you think it's going to lead to a case of anarchy? Why not leave them to their fate?
It won't. It won't lead to a case of anarchy. In fact, if you leave them to their fate, that is when there will be a state of anarchy. I don't know if you have seen this movie, Contagion.
Yeah.
Have you? You notice that towards the latter part of that movie, there was a state of anarchy in the United States because of shortage of food supply and other essential materials. What led to that? It's because of the fact that people were panicking, people were anxious, and the resources in feeding or attending to the consumers at the time in that particular movie was not forthcoming. So that will lead to chaos. When you allow people to do what they want, especially Africans, when you allow them to do what they want, there will be a state of anarchy. The government will not have a grip, will not have a strong hold on their subjects. And when that happens, there will be chaos.
All right, now people are like saying that the reason why this may be so tough in Africa and there's going to be a drastic increase in number of infected persons in Africa is because of poverty. Is that other factor to consider, that many countries don't even have the money to set up these centers to take care of the sick?
I mentioned this earlier. Poverty has always been a recurring feature in the African continent. If you check most things that are bedeviling there, most negativities that are bedeviling the African continent is as a result of poverty. Even the spread of HIV is as a result of poverty. As we mustn't undermine the fact that poverty is an issue. Yes, we know that, yes, even as a result of poverty, people are not educated. Because you need money, knowledge is bought. You need money to be educated. So poverty has always been an issue. And in the situation, I made mention of this, that if you check other highly civilized or highly advanced countries of the world, they have pumped serious of money in trying to curb this menace, this pandemic. I made mention of the United States pumping $1 trillion into their economy in trying to water down or to ameliorate the effect, the impact of this pandemic in the American society. But in Nigeria, do we have that means? In other African continents, do they have the means? I was seeing a post yesterday in Uganda that the president, Sebo, actually issued a directive to the effect that every foreigner coming into Uganda, they must pay for their hotel bills for the 14 days quarantine period. They must pay with their hotel bills. They must pay with their own hard-earned money to take care of themselves, to pay for their hotel bills. And if they refuse, the next available flight to their country will be booked at their own expense. But many of us appreciated or commended him.
Is that not too harsh?
It's as a result of poverty. Yes. If Uganda government or Ugandan states, as the case may be, they actually have the means to take care of this particular issue, they would have issued, or the president would have issued this archaic and inhumane directive. So this boils down or it narrows down to poverty. And African continent, we have always been experiencing this. It has always been a recurring feature in the continent. And when there is no money, when the government has no means, as a result of corruption or every other vices that has bedeviled the fact that we don't have the means to take care of ourselves. When there is no money, how can we cope this situation? How can we tackle this pandemic? So it's a problem. And I don't think we as a continent, Africa as a continent, we are ready for this battle. We are ready for this war. We are not.
All right, now you talked about corruption.
Yes.
You talked about some other factors. All factors you've mentioned, doesn't it boil down to leadership?
Not only leadership, but followership. Yes. I'm of the school of thought that leadership is not actually the problem of Africa or Nigeria, as the case may be, but we as the followers. I'm always of the opinion that you can't have bad leaders and at the same time have good followers. They will fall. That establishment or that group of leaders who are bedeviling that particular society cannot stand the test of time. They will fall because the power lies in the hands of the people. The sovereignty of a nation belongs to the people. And when you have a good followers and you as a leader, you are bad, you won't stand the test of time. They will flush you out. So if you look at Nigeria as a case study, you will notice that in our daily lives, in our daily routine as a people, one way or the other, we have failed this country. Not only the leaders. I used to tell my folks that what we do on a daily basis injures the country more than what our leaders in the Terry Arm Zone in Maitama, what they are doing up there. It has minimal effect compared to we as followers, what we do. And whether you like it or not, we, in our own little way, we are leaders. What have we done in our own respective ways as a people? So when you talk about leadership, it's not only those that are in the helms of affairs politically, but we'll have to look at every aspect, every scope.
The followers also.
Yes, every scope of leadership. Even though you are a cell brother or brethren in church, you are a leader. A cell leader is a leader as well. So everybody is a leader in our own little way, in our own respective way. So what have we done? And when you look at this issue, you will notice that leadership as a concept in Africa is failing. It's a dwindling concept. It's a dwindling concept, and we are not taking this concept seriously. And when there is a failed institution, or there are failed institutions, as the case may be, things will not go on right. We noticed how the Nigerian government failed to put up preemptive measures in trying to contain the virus from entering the country.
But they did.
That was
they shut down
medicine
airports,
after death.
Blocked the borders.
That's
educating people.
Actually medicine after death. They should have done that before now, because they are aware that Nigeria does not have the means, the manpower, the capability to contain the pandemic. Right. If after the pandemic has its toll in Nigeria. Okay. But they failed to do so.
Okay, now we just can't talk about Africa in the fight against this coronavirus. We're not talking about the African Union.
Okay.
So, have they failed in their aspect, or you think they should do more? What do you think they should do? Can they come into the situation to salvage Africa? After all, it's called African Union.
I think they have been idle so far. We haven't heard much about AU pertaining this pandemic, the spread of this pandemic in the African continent. You see, that is the myopic and also the nonchalant attitude of African leaders, or Africans, as the case may be, in handling issues. By now, there ought to be an emergency meeting of the African Union, of the respective head of governments and head of states of respective nations in Africa. And there ought to be a need by now, just now, that they come together and see how they can put up measures in tackling this pandemic. But we have not witnessed that just yet. And this is an issue. That is to tell you that even the African continent, they are not even ready. We are not ready to handle this situation. And it's not nice. It's not ideal. It's not ideal for any society to have this kind of perception towards a pandemic of this nature.
So for what you're saying right now, the AU, they failed African countries?
Yes, they have. AU as an organization, I personally does not believe in all this international organization. Just like the way Trump blasted the United Nations in his first appearance in the UN General Assembly. He said it's a country club. They call the United Nations the country club, whereby heads of governments come together and make merry for their own selfish interest. Because at the end of the day, we haven't even felt or experienced the impact of these international organizations in trying to handle issues. Kudos to the World WHO, which is a branch of the United Nations. They have done their part. They have done well, magnificently well. But if you want to narrow it down to the African Union, we haven't seen any impact from them.
All right, now, you keep talking about the World Health Organization, WHO, but from what we are seeing so far, many African countries, according to report, are still waiting for them to do something for Africa. Why the delay? Talking about loans, talking about grants to tackle this pandemic.
I heard that the World Bank is working up or putting up something to...
That's what you heard. Have they done it? Because right now, yes, time is just ticking.
Time is of the essence, actually.
Yeah.
Well, it's a sad situation, I would say.
So now, with this one on the ground, are you still going to give them kudos? Or are they just concerned about others like the Europe, the Americas, the Canadians, the Asian? What about the African continent?
The better we know this, it will be important in our own existence as a people. Africa is not a priority to these persons, to these people. They don't really put Africa as a priority, because Africa has nothing to offer on the table. That is their perception. When other world leaders are dealing with sensitive issues in trying to uplift their society, in trying to make their society a better one, we in Africa, we are talking about Boko Haram and other religious or sectarian violence. These are issues that reduce the interest of other nations of the world or other continents of the world in taking Africa seriously. So Africa is not their option.
So are you not saying that Africa is on its own in this situation? Are we
to some considerable extent? We are.
Wow. Wow. That's quite sad. Okay. Well, our time is up on this segment. As he said it's like we are on our own, but I believe that WHO is still looking to Africa.
Of course, they will. They will.
One way or the other.
They will.
But for individuals,
but it may not be forthcoming on time.
On time.
Yes.
And time is of the essence.
Yes. That's how I see it.
Wow, interesting. Well,
let's just hope that a vaccine or a cure comes out in time. Yes. Let's just hope. Right. Because what I saw on social media not quite long ago at a BRT bus station in Lagos, people dragging, trying to force themselves through into the bus. The sight of it is. Well, it's a really sad situation.
Thank you so much, Barrister Douglas Omogri, for coming to this show. I appreciate the wonderful analysis. We're not here to spread fear. We're here to tell you to do the best you can to get yourself and your family protected, okay? What are the rules and regulations laid down by government? Like what you rightly said, in this situation, leadership is not the problem. They've told you what to do. They have their own problems, they have their own fault, they have their own shortcomings, but you as a follower, what you've been asked to do to shield yourself, avoid gathering, wash your hands, use sanitizers. How far have you been able to obey these simple instructions?
Eat fruits as much as you can.
Eat fruits as much as you can. This instruction given out by your leaders, have you been able to follow? Our religious leaders, our market women, our transporters, what have you done? Have you played your part in order to curtail this virus? It is real. It is definitely real. Stay safe. See you tomorrow on International Forum. Bye for now.